Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. Today we are going to talk about meetings, WITB meetings and WOTB meetings, and what kind of meetings should we be having. You've probably heard me say before, I've never run into somebody that felt like they were having enough WOTB meetings. WOTB, for those of you that may not know, is working on the business meetings. WITB is working in the business meetings. I'm a big believer that we should be having both types with a fair frequency. Let's start with WITB meetings. I believe strongly that having daily and weekly meetings that are operational in nature is very important. I love a Monday morning meeting where that is a meeting for the week. Everybody gets together and makes the plan for the week. So I might need the backhoe on Thursday, but Joe also wanted to use the backhoe, so we can coordinate, make sure that, he doesn't take it at the same time I need it or vice versa. We may be pregging cows on Wednesday. Let's make sure everybody's available to do that, knows where to be, what their role is, etc. A weekly plan with a crew, even if the crew is just me, is a great idea. It keeps things from falling through the cracks, helps us to tie things together. Sometimes if we're pregging on Wednesday, somebody might need to go pick up vaccine on Monday or Tuesday. Again, even if I'm a crew of one, I still want to make sure that I've kind of backed, started with the end and then backed up to see what needs to happen ahead of time. Those are weekly meetings. Now, that I prefer to do that Monday morning. I've talked to people that like to do that Thursday or Friday afternoon, so it's kind of at the end of the week, sets them up for the next week. Either way is fine. You can do that in the afternoon if you want. Sometimes we got to get out first thing in the morning because it's going to be really hot. We can have that discussion after we've done our outside work. That's fine. The daily meetings tier off the weekly meetings. So these are both WITB, very much WITB meetings. And they would be a quick stand-up type 15-minute meeting, check in. Are there any problems, obstacles, anything need to change? Maybe we made plans on Monday to do something on Thursday, and Wednesday or Tuesday we realize that's not going to work. Wednesday morning, if we just have a quick stand-up meeting, we can say, yep, we got to change plans for Tuesday. And that gives all of us an opportunity to think about what needs to happen in order to make the change. Those meetings also are a good time to bring up, hey, I was, supposed to build a corner up on, the heifer pasture. I didn't have, X that I needed to get that done. Or the auger on the skid steer broke down. I couldn't get the hole dug to get the posts in. I've got a broken hose. Can somebody get that to town to get it fixed? Those are times when, if there's a roadblock for something, if there has to be a change in plans, we're still sort of working off the main weekly plan. But that's just a quick check-in to adjust or to, either confirm or change any details that need to from there based on more information. The reason we call this a stand-up meeting, we often have it, by a coffee pot in the shop, something like that in the morning, is we're not looking to sit down and stay for an hour. We want that to be 15 minutes. The Monday morning meeting, if that's an hour to an hour and a half to plan out the week, that's fine. That daily meeting should be 15 minutes quick. It could be less. It could be 2 minutes if everything's on track. Make sure everybody's there and healthy. Especially if we have single guys working in remote areas by themselves, great to have a quick check-in just to make sure everybody's there. Sometimes something happens and somebody isn't where they're supposed to be. And if we're not checking in daily, we might miss it for a day or two. That meeting, that 15-minute meeting, certainly does not have to be in person. It could be a Slack check-in or just a text message. A lot of folks use, some sort of messaging app that isn't just text, but just make sure we get a quick check-in each day. Everybody's alive. Everybody's parts are working. They have what they need to get their jobs done. The next type of meeting I like to have is a monthly meeting. I'm going to think of this more as a WOTB meeting. There are a few things we can do monthly that work really well. One of them is a quick budgeted versus actual type check-in. So we expected we were going to spend, $20,000 on feed this month. We spent 21. Okay, is that normal or, is that normal variance or is that out of the ordinary? Let's say we planned on spending 20,000, but we actually spent 40,000. That's because we paid January's bill in February. So both of those tickets came out in 1 month instead of 2. That budgeted versus actual meeting is a monthly is a great cadence to catch problems. That usually tracks with how your finances are usually done monthly, and bank accounts reconciled and all that closed, so you can get a real good picture of what's going on. It is long enough that it, takes out some of the week to week and day to day type variation, but short enough that if there's a problem, you can see it coming. And most importantly, if there's a variance, you can remember why. When we look back at the end of a quarter or a year, yeah, hey, sales were off by X amount this month. Why was that? Well, if I'm talking about the month of March and I'm in December, like I'm going to have a hard time remembering. Whereas if we're having that conversation in the same month, usually we can remember what happened. Monthly meetings are also a good time to do some planning. And this can be a little more WOTB focused, but prioritizing tasks that need to come in the next month can be a good idea. So in the busy summer season, when lots of us are irrigating and grazing, possibly cutting hay, possibly marketing cattle, possibly trying to get summer vacation in, that sort of thing, family vacation in, it's a good idea to have that monthly WITB type meeting just to check in and look at the month ahead. What I'm trying to do there is avoid any places where when I flip the calendar over from Sunday to Monday, I find a big surprise. I really want to make sure that I see those things coming out ahead. Which reminds me, I am a huge fan of a big dry erase type calendar on the wall that everybody can see that has 12 months in one spot. You can buy these laminated and write on them with dry erase markers and just thumbtack them to the wall. What's his face? Who's the famous social influencer guy? Has his unmentionable big calendars. Jesse Itzler, sorry. He markets those, and I think you can buy them on Amazon. But having that on the wall and really sitting down as far ahead of time as possible to plan out major events is a very important thing. Generally, you have some idea when you're going to brand your calves, when you're going to preg check your cows, when you're going to ship your calves, when you're going to get yearlings to go to grass. We don't have to have every detail in this, and we may not have the days exactly right, but I might block out like a 2-week period for branding. Like, I'm not sure which days we're going to brand, but they're probably going to be in this window. And for right now, I'm just going to kind of gray those out. And the reason I do that is because we want to look at the year as a whole and see places where we can fit in our family vacation and commit to that as early as possible. What are good times to go to the dentist? What are good times to take the kids in to have their eyes checked? Let's do all those things in such a way that they don't disrupt our normal operations. Nothing worse than having a guy on your crew who's been scheduled to go to the dentist for 9 months on the same day you're planning to ship. Not a great time to be shorthanded. Now, if we have a calendar that looks like we're just flat out busy every day of the year, we have a problem. We need to look into that. But generally, we can kind of clump things together so that we are not just all out busy every day of the year. We have some seasons where we're particularly busy, like around weaning time or the beginning of irrigation season or, harvest or planting season. But then we have other times where maybe we're off a little bit and it's appropriate to go to the dentist.
At RanchRite, we don't just understand ranch accounting, we live it. Our team includes ranchers, ag finance pros, sell-by marketers, HR advisors, and even CPAs who've worked across regenerative agriculture. Every one of us brings hands-on ranching experience to the table because you deserve a financial partner who actually gets how this life works. Learn more about the team behind the mission at ranchritellc.com.
The next type of meeting that I'm a big fan of is a quarterly meeting. That meeting happens, as you might guess, about every 3 months, although sometimes we'll ramp our what we call our quarterly strategic meeting up a little bit and have them more frequently. This meeting is trying very much to be a WOTB meeting, working on the business. It has WITB components to it, but we are trying to take a little larger view of the business, make sure, first off, that we're on track, that the things we are trying to do are, in fact, having the desired effect, and then really looking for opportunities. So this is a good time to consider maybe a large equipment purchase. It's a great time to examine the markets and really look and see, are we on track, to hit our production goals? Is our marketing plan still sound? This is a time to take kind of I'd call it a 20,000 foot view of the business and see if we're really getting to where we want to be. Now, sometimes these quarterly strategic meetings, that you might have 3 of those a year, not 4. I'm okay with that. When we get to towards the end of the year, it's a good time to start looking forward to the next year. And as we get into the next year and have the prior year's numbers finalized, good time to look back a little bit and see if we hit our targets that next year. There are a number of people that argue that a quarter is really a great time period, if you will, to work in a business. The idea being that 3 months is long enough to accomplish some significant things, but not so long that we lose track of them. So kind of like with expenses, talking about them on a monthly basis, we're probably going to be able to remember what they are at a month at a time, not 9 months ago. Quarterly intervals give us the ability to accomplish meaningful tasks that aren't, quick checkoff items, but really which involve more thought, more care, more process, but don't get us so far away that the start and the end, kind of aren't recognizable from one another. Sometimes if we set goals for periods that are too long, right, we kind of lose track of them. And then if you're like me, you wind up putting a lot of effort into the final 3 weeks before the deadline instead of working on it continuously through the period. Those quarterly meetings can really set the stage for the business also in the coming year. So imagine that we have goals that are 12 months long, but then we can come up with intervals where, okay, in this period, this is what needs to happen so that next quarter we can be successful. Think of this when we think about wintering cows, right? The activities that I do in the wintertime, how I feed my cows, what kind of condition they're in, how I graze my cows, that can have a lot of impact on how they calve, which can have a lot of impact on how they summer and then ultimately how they wean, and can have a lot of impact on how those cows breed back the next year. So in the livestock and crop businesses, we see things that are tied together over long periods of time. We want to make sure that we are adequately focused on the current period with respect to how it has impacts on those subsequent periods. The final meeting is one to really think about. And you can do this, once, twice a year, I would say tops. This is where we have customers that set up their own little board of advisors. Ranching for Profit replicates this with their EL group, where you get together with, other like-minded producers. We have a number of people that have set these up on their own. They meet once or twice a year, and they have other people look at their business. In some cases, you might take a tour of your place, drag people around and have them look at the operation, see what they think. You should talk about your finances. You should talk about your marketing plan. You should talk about your human resources at these types of meetings. You can do this however you want. If you want to do it with EL, that's a great way to do it. If you want to do it independently, that's also a good way. But the idea that you're going to show your business to someone else and have to explain it, especially for those of us that work in small businesses or have been sole proprietors or are sole proprietors, that's a really good practice. There are lots of things I can convince myself of when I'm talking about it inside my head. And when I start talking about it out loud, it doesn't sound quite as good. It's a great time for people to kind of poke holes in our assumptions, poke holes in our arguments, challenge our thinking, and really have a debate. Just because somebody else might not agree doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, but I darn sure want to know why they don't agree and what they see as the risks. Good time to get our head up, really look at the bigger landscape around us. Good time for us to, have those ideas strengthened by being challenged. There are lots of other meetings you can have. I am certainly not against having more frequent meetings. As I mentioned, I rarely ever talk to a business that is having enough WITB meetings. I do think that we actually found one. We actually encountered a business that meets enough. And it's very important that we understand how the meetings that we have contribute to our productivity. Some of you may know we developed a course called Meet Right a couple of years ago in conjunction with Eric Mose. I think it's a great course. If you guys are interested in it, we certainly could share that with you. The Meet Right course goes through really this 4-meeting framework developed by Pat Lencioni, which is the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly program. It works very, very well. The people that we have worked with that have implemented it see improvement in their business. There are pointless meetings. There are waste your time meetings. There are unproductive meetings. Meetings should always start with an agenda. They should end with a list of to-dos that are assigned. I like meetings that have a reasonably bracketed time frame, so we're going to meet for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours even, but it's defined ahead of time, and we leave with an action plan. If we are constantly not leaving with an action plan, if those meetings aren't leading to action or activity by specific people, those meetings are not contributing positively. That can happen for a number of reasons. That can be a leadership problem. That can kind of be a culture problem. But I think finishing your meeting with a list of things to do is important. One thing we want to be very careful of is that we don't have too big a to-do list. And if we're looking at sort of the business level stuff, strategic level stuff, we're keeping those items very small. So in our quarterly strategic meetings, leaving with more than 2 or 3, sort of big tasks that need to be accomplished in the coming quarter usually is not a good idea. Now, we assume that we have to do, our business as usual or the regular daily activities in addition to whatever quarterly initiatives we have going. And those quarterly initiatives are going to take some more time and effort, and we can't have 16 of them. That doesn't work. We're going to overhaul all of our marketing. We're going to redo our website. We're going to hire 6 salespeople, and we're going to, move to 3 times a day cattle moves. That's just not going to work. That's too much stuff. Things always take longer than you expect. They always cost more than you expect. They often don't quite produce the results that we expect. I would manage myself according to that. Try to have a little bit of extra room in my daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly time budget so that when things do go wrong, when the blizzard comes, when the check doesn't arrive on time, I am prepared for that, really not very rare occurrence, right? Those are things that are maybe unexpected, but certainly could be anticipated. So that's part of the reason we use this meeting structure, is to prepare us for what's to come and to help us be resilient in the face of change. Hopefully this is helpful with you today. Thank you very much for listening. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.